Hello and welcome to Higher Ground here at TCTV in Olympia. And we're going to be talking about this venue right here and TCTV public access as well as some other things, and have, like Ed Sullivan used to say, a really, really big show for you today. Not to get corny, but I'm going to introduce you to co-host and some wonderful guests here. Tom?
How you doing, Buck? And
Very
thanks for
good.
having me. And my name's Tom Faith. And today we got great guests who are the owners of CaTMA Gallery at 416 and a half Washington Street in the great city of Olympia. And with me today are China and Arlington. And I would like to hear Arlington. I'm so sorry. You know, that's the problem with television.
I was going to say, I thought, it was Harrington. And what? He's
Yeah.
throwing us
Anyway,
a curve
sorry, I
already.
didn't mean to throw a curveball there already. But CaTMA Gallery is, I think, a great mainstay in Olympia, offering a variety of great venues, from arts on the wall to live music to live talk, poetry, whatever. China and Arlington have done a great job in really securing a pulse of the art beat here in town. And I want to hear about, the first thing I want to hear about is how the gallery got started. And China, please, why don't I start with you?
All right. CaTMA, it kind of got started as a result of the shutdown and the pandemic and things that kind of pulled a lot of spaces open in the downtown core. It sort of created a shift of which businesses had enough longevity that they could stick around and make it through, versus maybe some other things that we had going on that were either fledgling, or we lost also some long-term businesses. It kind of opened up space. We've had our art studios in downtown Olympia for the past 8 to 10 years, and so when we had storefront space open in the building, combined with the closure of a lot of venues, and then also venues that are now reopened, but just at the time weren't really able to sustain, maybe they switched ownership, they weren't really able to sustain work for the creative body. The city did a lot with trying to create work for artists through like a mural program, but the reality is that a lot of artists here, we don't just function here, we function all over the place. And so to have a lot of your livelihood sort of like shifted, and then to also have this loss inside of community, it seemed like, well, what is a good placeholder for rekindling all of that? And so CaTMA. And we've had other places throughout time in Olympia that kind of have done or sought to do something very similar to what CaTMA does. We've had a lot of galleries that popped up in nonprofit spaces where people could come and play music and perform, and not always with the component of art on the walls sometimes. I mean, not in the way that we do it at CaTMA.
Right.
Not in such a curated way, more as like a just, Olympia has an interesting ebb and flow. I think it's a pretty transitional place and transitory place where people kind of come and go. We have 3 colleges here, and we get a almost like an energetic ebb and flow of what people's focus is on. But throughout all of that, we always have this high level of generative creative energy.
Arlington, I wanted to ask you, is CaTMA, do you think, the epitome of what you guys are at now in terms of how you see art and where you want your gallery to fit in terms of representing Olympia?
Well, there's the potential for a lot of incubation to happen at CaTMA as it is now. We enjoy bringing in traveling artists to perform, and we always try to extend that to international artists, people coming from different countries and whatnot, for sharing and kind of jamming and deconstructing culture. The potentiality of the place and the concept itself I think transcends the brick and mortar location, CaTMA.
So talk to me about CaTMA being a place where you deconstruct culture. Where are you going with that?
Well, I mean, I think China's curatorial strategy is embracing of concept. My strategies with I'm a little more focused on the music than working with other artists, mostly. But you know what?
And that's interesting because you're an artist as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I mean, we're both pretty heavily involved with sound and music,
Right,
and painting and sculpture and whatnot. But I guess like what I'd like to see more of is ways that we can build community through sound.
Nice.
I think that's important.
And I can speak a little bit to that as well, because you talked about deconstructing culture, and I think CaTMA, so I don't really think of CaTMA as being either of us or even us as a collective. CaTMA is really this sort of, it has like a higher boss, and that higher boss is really, in visual form, is kind of like this cat on its hind legs who's super elegant with like a Salvador Dali mustache and maybe like a martini in one hand, and it's just going, no, 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 that isn't what I thought at all. Repaint those walls and make it look this way. Or, it's over here filing its nails and saying, I told you that artist might not be the best fit. They're very challenging to work with. And do you really want to take all of this on? And so I feel like there's something bigger than us. Our life before CaTMA was very much more free. And I think that as facilitators of creating generative space, and what I mean by generative space, and when I said about deconstructing culture, it's almost like reconstructing culture, giving people more of an opportunity to find each other and create more of like a salon identity. Because you're a visual artist as well, and it's really an isolated lifestyle to be a visual artist.
The way your venue's set up, it creates that, it's a space
it seeks to create it,
where energy comes in and it stays there while you're there. It's really nice.
Yeah.
It's a very expressive place for people, and the thing I like most about CaTMA is the fact of the diversity of people it brings in. Where I've gone to other galleries in Olympia, and it's very white bread, and I think CaTMA's got white bread too, but you serve rye and pumpernickel, and I like it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, when I mentioned before that we've had periodic energy to create inclusive spaces, a lot of what happens creatively here, and I would even extend that beyond to like a more community-centric, like how do we generate anything, right? Because creative energy is about creating and making a thing. And so I think that, what you're doing here, Buck, like what we're doing at the station in general,
And sharing it though,
exactly, too, right? Is this idea that we're creating something bigger than ourselves. And I think a lot of things that have been creative that are kind of more popularized outside of Olympia by creative people in Olympia, it really has formulated from small groups of people just coming together and being like, we want to do a thing. They're not even necessarily thinking about wanting to do it for a greater purpose.
Right.
I think the little bit of difference that CaTMA has is kind of looking at this longevity and looking at all of this kind of transient energy that comes in, because we have a lot of people here who have a wealth of experience from all over the globe, and to be able to kind of open up that space and think like, well, what does that really look like to really generate on a bigger level?
And I also find that your gallery is the one place where all the time I see other artists, and it's a collective.
Yes.
So it's very nice that you have that atmosphere, and you also, in that venue, your marketing strategies are really well appreciated by me. Like you do these fantastic group shows. The last one being the Pillow Talk, which
Yeah,
why
which
don't you talk
actually I have a pillow that is your work that I brought with from that show.
What a coincidence!
Right here. Well, it is a little bit of a coincidence because I don't know that you expected I was going to bring it with, but we're switching shows right now, and so as we reconfigure the
So
gallery.
why don't you talk about the theme of Pillow Talk?
So yeah, Pillow Talk was based around a little bit of what you were touching upon. So a lot of our shows were kind of pre-curated long in advance. You know, as artists and musicians ourselves, we know more people than we could probably ever show in 10 years. But one thing that I happen to notice is I really see where people are working in a similar je ne sais quoi realm, you know, and they don't necessarily know each other. And what I was talking about building community, you know, and kind of my own personal, you know, aside from being an artist, just being a human in the world, is this idea that the more of us that put support in different arenas and work together, you know, I'm from the DIY sort of generation, but like DIT, I feel like is really where it's at. You know, it's like do it together, bring it all together. So the theme with Pillow Talk kind of emerged out of this idea that we had a lot of artists, like you said, a lot of artists hang out at CaTMA. They integrate, they kind of salon with each other. It's sort of a place where people can meet each other.
And there's a dynamic to the space itself that I
Yeah.
think really forces a level of engagement. I mean,
Yeah, it's tiny,
It
but
is-
mighty.
You can't separate yourself from your fellow gallery guests.
it is a small gallery, and so
That's what I like about
when
it.
you know, if a show is in progress and someone enters in through the front door, you know, everyone is aware that like, oh, someone just came in the door, and that's totally fine.
And it's
you know.
welcoming.
Yeah.
It's a home
know?
space.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like having a home space, but in a public environment.
And
know.
for other artists like myself, I'm meeting other artists there, which has been really beneficial for me. And I met Celery Jones through your Pillow Talk, and you know she's a great artist and wonderful person.
Wonderful person.
Yeah. So thank you. I mean, you're doing a service for Olympia, and
Thank you.
you're keeping the art movement strong and alive here. And with that, I want to talk about the music side, because I really would love to hear you guys perform for us today, if that's possible. I don't know who wants to go first, but
Well, I guess I can go first.
China, that would
Ladies
be lovely.
before gentlemen.
I'm pretty set up to do such a thing.
Before you start, why don't you tell us a little bit about the piece you're going to be doing?
So I have, for the last 10 years, been performing under the moniker Liquid Letters. It originally was just wine glasses that I would play, and it sort of was this way to bridge something that I feel like as a visual artist is very hard to translate, which is that when you make a piece of visual art, you're kind of just putting it out there on the wall and someone else is interacting with it, but you don't necessarily know who or what their, you know, opinion is. It's not like what we're doing here, where we're in conversation with each other. And so the music side of it came from this inspiration about sending a message across water. You know, like you can put the little note in a bottle and seal it off with the wax and send it out into the ocean, and you don't know if anyone will ever get anything from it. So it's from there, over 10 years, it's evolved to being kind of a happening. There aren't that many recordings of it or documents of it, though, you know, over 100 shows, I'm sure many, many more. I'm just being very casual about it, but like at least 100 is a reasonable amount. happenings have occurred, and sometimes in places that no longer exist, and sometimes in places I've never returned to, you know. But it is all 100% improvised. And today, it usually has many different instruments, but it's always different. And today it's just going to be
Before you start,
these instruments here. I can tell you a little about them before I start, but go ahead.
okay, so this is improvised. What in the studio here, what influences will you bring into your work that you're going to perform? Is there or is it just
Well, I
you're
have a
pulling
little-
from other places?
I have a little bit of a cheat because I have performed here before.
Ah.
And I have spent time in the studio before, and in different show situations, you know? And, you know, I can plug and please somebody bring back Oli Dance. That was a great thing that has happened over a variety of eras, and, you know, sometimes with live DJs, sometimes with live music, sometimes it's just like a party going on. It's a dance show. So, you know, I've seen different things that have happened here. There's a lot of like meaty conversations, and there's been a lot of music. So part of that could be something I could pull from. Also, I'm a little witchy, so, you know, astrology, and just like the energy of a space.
Yeah.
So my thought is, though we're not recording this live today, my thought is that part of this collaboration is with, pardon me, anyone who will receive this. So,
Nice.
yes, excuse me, I didn't bring a glass of water in here. We usually don't have liquids in this
Right,
studio.
yeah.
But yeah, so today I'm going to just be performing through, I have a harmonizer and a sampler and a microphone, and all the sounds you will hear will come through that context.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you need an introduction?
Would you like to give one?
Well, I think you're pretty special, Shields, so yes. So, Olympia, please enjoy this performance from China Face Star.
Thank you. continuum.
Can I comment?
Yes, I would love. That's just a
That-
little taste. It's just.
That was so big, and to me,
Thank you.
it's a soundtrack. I mean, this played, and
I call it soundscaping.
It's beautiful. I felt like I was on my own musical journey of people I listened to in the past, Laurie Anderson, even Yoko
Thank you.
Ono. I mean, there's beautiful. You just have just this wonderful, wonderful narrative. And while this was happening, the visuals were just beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really nice.
no, thank you for having me contribute a little bit of it. As I said, it's always improvised.
That was
And you asked about like what feeds into that, and so I feel like that was all of our energy right now.
it was great.
Journey, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And I think fitting for your show,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
Because, if your elevator speech or whatever, what is that for this show?
How do you mean?
I mean, it's a challenge, right? We have to put ourselves on the spot sometimes. You ask me what my music is about.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess anyone who would ask me, I'd probably give them a different answer.
Well, the best way to find out is to perform it.
Right.
And
Definitely.
I thought that was a super great treat.
Thank you.
Arrington, you're going to have a hard time,
It'll be a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
but I look forward
what
to
am I
it.
gonna do now?
You want to give us a little background on what you're going to do?
I
Or
want to
gonna do with
interject
this thing
just
here?
one thing. As you were performing,
Yeah.
I've almost hit this and
We could have a little thing at the end where maybe we could all perform together.
there you go.
I
Yeah.
do often use sound bowls and different things in my performance. I just, for, space and time, I only brought what would be the smallest sample.
so
You have
Arrington,
access to one.
what are you going to do?
Wonderful.
Well, I call this sort of set up the voice mask. So I like to work with very simple elements and extract the most maximal amount of sound possible out of the most kind of rudimentary things. This is a tube of plastic with a little bit of wax paper on the end. These are pieces of driftwood. Down in here are some bells. And this is an aluminum trash can that I've painted some spirit faces on. So these are all going to be a part of what I'll do for you.
Excellent.
And I will have to stand up, so maybe I'll just stand right here and kind of push my chair back and take my glasses off. All right, one thing at a time here. Set those. Oh, I couldn't get rid of that. That's all right. Got some bells. I can put those around my neck here.
I was hoping you were going to. What? Ooh-wee.
Arrington, that was huge.
Oh, thank you.
You talk about deconstructing culture.
Yeah.
Your music does that. I gotta tell you, I heard every genre of music.
Oh.
I felt like I was on a primordial tour of where music came from. And I'd like to get the soundtrack to that when I take ayahuasca.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
thank you.
You're going to share the ayahuasca.
I
aren't you?
will.
Okay.
And what I really liked,
Yeah.
the spirit mask. I
Yeah.
want to hear
Yeah.
about that because it seemed to bring you into another realm.
I tell you, I've been making music that if you're listening just to the sound, what I'm doing musically might not be that different than anything I would have been doing 30 years ago. But when I started to use this mask a little less than a year ago, when I started using this mask for the first time, as soon as I put it on, it brought me into a whole other dimension.
Oh, cool.
And so I started wearing the mask forces me to sing in a completely different way. And part of that is if you can imagine the resonance and the echo of my own voice bouncing off this little trash can thing, it is a massive sound. So I've got all that happen, all these vibrations kind of happening inside my skull that, I mean, if I'm just singing into a microphone, I mean, all the vibrations is happening all the time, but having it all kind of coming back to me, there's like a biofeedback element to it, right? You know? And then, once I started having so much fun with like, okay, well, here's a trash can, but
I
then,
wouldn't call that a trash can.
but then I painted it, and so by the act of painting it, I've given this aluminum trash can with what's this say on it?
It says steel.
No, it says it's got
It
something
says
written on it,
100% steel.
or whatever it is. Anyway,
It's alive.
by the act of painting it, I've given this trash can a spirit. And so when I put this on and I start rocking back and forth, I start stomping my feet.
Oh, I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
a couple genres that I picked up on.
Yeah.
I don't know what the specific word would be, but prison music from the early 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And
Well, we would call it hollering.
hollering,
Hollering,
yeah,
yeah.
or the road gangs.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, a lot of that guttural,
Yeah, yeah.
which is, for me, just breath. It's like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the,
Absolutely.
the breath of labor.
It's just letting the breath, keep, you know, get you moving on to take your next step.
I
you
just
know?
thought that
Yeah.
you guys together.
The sound that you're getting from your other instrument there too is just amazing.
Oh yeah.
Wax paper and
Yeah. No, this is a real special thing.
piping. Wow.
It's a real special thing. I mean, you know, one or the other of them, they each have their own entire universe of sound, but then combining them, it just that's going into the next dimension. But this is the original voice mask, because what we're talking about is masking the voice itself. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a mask to hide your face. What you're talking about is the masking of the sound by just that membrane there gives this extra level of vibration that opens up a whole different dimension.
I got to tell you
Yeah.
guys, combined, you guys have a really cool off-Broadway show to put on. I'm serious.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, with
we
your
do a
music and-
separate project together that's called Songs of Psychic Fire, and you can find it through Arrington's Bandcamp on the internet.
Great.
Yeah.
And then I also was going to ask you, I unfortunately can't remember the name of the film that just came out from the performance in Italy. It's not this specific mask, but Arrington was in
Oh.
Italy earlier this year, and he did workshops where he got other people playing these face masks it's for a ritual, a yearly annual ritual in this
Well,
town, or how did that go down?
Yeah, I mean, how would I explain that? I mean, it was a festival in this village. It's a medieval village up in the mountains in Abruzzo, which is a region of Italy that doesn't really get a lot of tourism. It's one of the poorer regions of Italy, and they've had a lot of earthquakes over the years, so every time the town gets built up, it kind of comes crashing back down a generation later. The last earthquake, or the last serious earthquake, was about 10 years ago. So they're still rebuilding. It's a town called Fontecchio, and Fontecchio comes from the fountain. And in the center of town, there's a sacred fountain that has like a little bit of, it's like a steeple, and then the water is spouting from the mouths of these 4 kind of primordial wild man faces. And, you know, just being there, you get a really special sense, you know, not only of antiquity, but, you know, here in Olympia, we live in a town with fresh flowing artesian water that we have access to all the time. And it's delicious and amazing and revivifying in every way. And they have that exact same quality. This is mountain water flowing directly from mountain springs through these mouths of these creature figures that are just so incredible. And then actually the other thing about the town is the church, and this is only about 200 people live in this town, but the church was built on a 2,000-year-old temple of Jupiter.
Whoa.
So there's another layer of significance that you know, going back thousands of years, I mean, it's really something incredible to be a part of. And so the festival that I performed this last July, you know, I had been invited to go out there and do some workshops, and it was part of their village kind of summer festival. And there was mask making. I did voice workshops. We did some group singing. There was a woman named Enza. I forget her last name. Enza did drumming, traditional drumming workshops. And it was just a wild time. And in the end, we did the big performance in the town square, and then these massive puppet creatures that people came out wearing were actually, they were lighting off fireworks from these dancing puppets, and that was a sight to behold, I tell you.
Well, and that reminds me of hopefully we'll, and through the grapevine, I've heard that we're going to be getting back the procession of the species.
All right.
And we're a much bigger community here.
Yeah.
But to think about a town of 200 people essentially putting together the efforts that's put together for over 20 years with the procession of the species, where people can come together and make costumes and create musical pieces and dance and come together in this sort of community way. I love the idea that in Fonteco it's the water,
Water's
here
what
it's the water
brought
too.
everyone together, yeah. That's
How-
what brings people together.
Oh.
Yeah, water.
Yeah.
We're fortunate with that. And, when you were asking about CaTMA earlier, that's one thing that I feel like, you can open a space and you can say these are our intentions to show art. It could be very simple. We want to show art. In our case, in exhibition, because a lot of places are more gift shop and store-based. But really, what it brings is this salon aspect, this other greater aspect. But really, it's about unifying and connecting things. There's a lot of people who've never heard about the station, right? We have this incredible resource here where we can make television.
Yeah, really.
You know?
What we're doing.
Yeah, what we're doing right now. And there's so many people who maybe don't even know that we have that. But once they, you tell 10 people, one of those 10 people is hopefully going to get really involved. Maybe 5 of the 10 people will donate right now. We have, not to get to, telethon about it, but right now is a great time to donate to the station and have it be doubled. I think there's some partnerships right now.
Well, do you want to talk about your 16-set CD collection that you want to send into?
Yes. Well, I do think that if you donate to the station and you want to come in and bring your receipt when we reopen our next exhibit at CaTMA, which will be in the next week or so, we're happy to compensate you with one of our stickers. We'd be really happy to make a trade.
very cool.
It's like they won't say I voted or I donated. That's not something we're in collaboration with the station, but just I am behind it in that much.
What's the show coming up?
So the next show that we're going to be doing at CaTMA, it's going to be our 11th exhibit. And our 11th exhibit, we're going to show our own work. Arrington and I have both been artists for 30 plus years, and we have active studio work as artists. For myself, but also for Arrington, we both work a lot of times in series, and so our work really transforms throughout the arc of time of what we've made. And so this is going to kind of be an opportunity to pull current stuff, but
A little
also
bit of a retrospective.
yeah, not so much in a retrospective way, because I think
Right.
we would need a much larger space than we even have in this town accessible right now, unless we chose the Armory. But yeah, we will show some tastes of different things.
Can we talk about the Armory for a minute? Because I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like to find out.
I'd love to talk about all sorts of things.
What's going on with the Armory? Is there going to be any space that is dedicated to galleries there, or is it just going to be classrooms?
So I know that they just recently put out, and you'd have to go to the City of Olympia. I think they might have information on their website. City of Olympia Arts and Parks is actually like our arts commission for the city. Well, we also have a City of Olympia Arts Commission. We have a county commission. We have the greater state, like Arts WA. But the city has taken over the Armory, and I do think that they most recently put out a plan that sort of maps out based on surveys, and I don't know what kind of data processes they were using, but I did fill out some surveys at points about what this space should be for. And I think it's something really pretty tricky when you think about art. It's a distinction. A few years ago, I really felt like, can we get a movement where we actually get a little bit more distinctive? There's a lot of people who are like, I'm an artist. but being a thespian is incredibly different than being a sculptor, which is incredibly different than being a graphic designer, which is incredibly different than being a
Musician.
painter, musician. And
Right.
even inside of each of those, there's so many nuances as to what that actually looks like. How do we do our craft? How invested are we in it? So I think, and then there's the educational aspect. So I don't know that there's going to be specifically dedicated gallery space. I do know that I just sat in a webinar about Inspire Olympia, which is a tax that we passed a couple years back that will increased our sales tax and creates a fund to fund arts in our area, specifically the city of Olympia. And sitting in on the webinar, a lot of that is geared towards nonprofit access.
Right.
And less towards individual aspect. And so I'm curious to see how the Armory itself will be able to like actually open up the space for individual usage.
Well, they have that garage right next to it where they curated a really nice show at the end of the summer. Did you go to that?
That was part of an actual year-long series. I mean,
That's a moving
summer-long
show, right?
Well, it was part of a summer-long series. I think you're talking about Thurston County Museum of Art. They did a show there that was a more curated show. But that was actually just part of a series that the city put on. I am
That's
not the
the-
biggest fan of I'll be very transparent, I'm not the biggest fan of what they called it, which was art interventions, which I think it's just, I don't know. I don't know that intervening is what we really need to be doing with the arts. I think like celebrating
yeah, you
is
don't
a
need
good
to,
term. I think like,
We have to send this artist
pulling
away for
people
2
up,
months.
imagining you're in a building and you're lifting someone up there. I think that's something we need with the arts. Yeah.
I just thought that venue though was beautiful.
It's a great space.
And
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't they take advantage of that for?
Well, it will be. I think there are going to be exhibition spaces inside of the space. I'm not really involved in that aspect. It's more the city that is involved in the Armory. They've had feedback from many different contingencies. But, I think when we think about, like, how can we really make this arts environment flourish more? It's asking these questions, and it's asking these questions of each other. But it's also,
Celebrating
inspiring but also
Here.
inspiring people beyond these conversations, schools, kids who are interested in getting in the arts, college students who are just here for a while, all of the community to come together and really understand that they can come and participate, And I think that having a lot of momentum in the last few years through different nonprofits, we have the Art Space Alliance. That's something that's only been in function for the last 10 to 12 years and fledgling in the beginning. They're much more active right now. All of these groups, part of why we're not currently a nonprofit at CaTMA is, though we function as a nonprofit, essentially our identity, our value system, all of our functionality is the slow processes and then who is involved. So not to continually come back to the station, because this isn't really what this episode and this show's about, but this is a rare place where you as an individual and as an individual creative person can create your own collective or come as one person, 2 people, 5 of us, 10, 20,
Well, you talk
and
about
make something that we can do.
making the community, moving the ball. This is the venue to do that by bringing people on and having them do what you guys did.
Yeah.
Entertain and have people just get blown away.
Create space, and if anyone from Inspire Olympia is out there as a citizen and constituent of, not a constituent of like a political person, but a business owner, a person who works and functions, gives time to nonprofits and things. I do know that part of their process is to create these calls where people can apply for the grant money. I think as much as that can be sent out to all of our nonprofits and really like explain to people how that can work. But I would love it if they would reserve a portion of money that could be a public vote, similar to how the city does the Percival Landing. They like put sculptures out there and people can come and vote and the city purchases a sculpture. I would love it if Inspire Olympia could be something like that where people could like, suggest someone to get a grant, because the reality is not everyone has a department or the manpower or person power to go after some of these grants and this funding, and specifically when you got a lot going on, because
China, I think
you're
grant-
making culture happen. You don't necessarily have time to sit around and
I
ask
think
for money.
grants are great, and grants take a lot of time. I'm for marketing.
Yes.
Let's get advertisers in here, and boy, we could really do something great with public television.
Yeah. Well, the
mean,
one thing I
Just
love
get
about
the word out, get people to show up.
get
Yeah.
people to show up, because
Yeah.
you know it's not just money. I think a lot of what creates like vibrancy
Community.
is the actual community showing up. Us showing up today. Us,
Definitely.
you know, you opening up your space for Tom to like launch future shows and future projects specific to the arts. Because I know you speak to a lot of people in all different realms
Right.
in your show. I've seen your show and
Yeah.
applaud it, applaud your
thank you.
dedication as well.
Buck is a good man.
Yeah, you know, but it takes that. It's a two-sided equation, you know, and that's something that curating and being a gallerist is very different than just being an artist. Because artists can sit around, we can talk for days about the
Yeah.
arts, but when it comes time to actually have to show up and do a thing, it's, I don't know, there's like this combination of anxiety and security, but then also like snoots to the air, maybe I don't have time for that or something, you know, and everything in between. It's like the showing up is a big part of it, you know.
Right, and the showing up is huge.
It's huge.
Because without you, we have no show.
It's true.
Well, and you know, I show up and I do an improvised bit of music.
Yeah, it's great.
There's a reason I do it as an improvised bit of music, because I also just come up with ideas the same way I do with visual art, and I make music. But there's something that then creates this other barrier where now you think about, how did I present it? Or am I presenting what I intended to present? Or is my sound wired in just so that the perfect clean sound is coming through?
Well, I'd like both of you to
You know.
know, I'd love to have you back here because
Yeah.
you're a fantastic guest. And
Absolutely.
you know what I think would be fun if we could do it? Can we do a little jam to close out the show?
Yes, I would
right.
love that.
Yeah.
Yes, let's do a little jam.
Arrington, are you going to give us,
Well, he could probably give you some driftwood. I don't know how you are on percussion. You've got the sound bowl.
oh yeah.
I've got a microphone, and I have control over how loud it gets. So,
And this is just incredible, China, what you put together
Thank you.
here. Wow. And what you're producing. Woo.
oh, thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
And what you're producing, and what you produce, and what you produce.
Hey, so before we close out, I'd like to thank China and Arrington. What great guests, beautiful people, and friends. And that's what Olympia is about, making friends. So keep the love out there. Okay. And thank you, Buck.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
fading out.
That was just natural.